In the second day, we have one session which is devoted to companies, usually local companies. And today we are going to start our second day with this session. So for today, we have two companies, the Fantasy Sports Interactive, which we collaborate last year, and also OPAP, which is the big betting company in Greece. So without any further ado, let's welcome Bill Mexias, Vasilis Mexias, and Vasilis Palaskas from Fantasy Sports Interactive for their presentation. Vasilis, are you ready?
Hello. Vasilis, you're muted, I think.
Okay. Hello to everyone. Just a minute to share my screen.
First of all, allow me to say that we're very happy to participate in the workshop, and we would like to thank the organizers and especially Yannis and Dimitris for making this happen. We will, first of all, as Yannis said, we are from Fantasy Sports Interactive. I am a co-founder and CEO of the company, and Vasilis is a data analyst in our company. We're both graduates of the Athens University of Economics and Business, and we're happy to open the second day of the workshop. I'll give the ball to Vasilis if he wants to add something, and then we can start with the presentation.
Okay, Vasilis, thank you. As you all understand, my name is Vasilis Palaskas, and together with Bill Mexias today, we will present you our work focused on the fantasy sports and more specifically on the corresponding analytics. Also, I have to note that I'm very glad for our invitation to this exciting workshop. Special thanks to the coordinators of this workshop, and I hope as all of you in the next year to be without being remotely to this workshop. Okay. Now I will give the ball to Bill Mexias to start the presentation, and then I will proceed with more analytics concerning the fantasy soccer. Bill?
Great. So we will start this presentation with giving you a short introduction about fantasy sports, what fantasy sports is, and also give you the business perspective of our company, Fantasy Sports Interactive, FSI for short, and why we use sports analytics. And then we will get into more details on how exactly we use it. We will give you a brief overview of the work that we have been doing. So let's start with the basics. What is fantasy sports? So some of you may already know this. It's quite popular, especially abroad. Fantasy sports is a popular skill game where players, participants, assemble their perfect ideal team from real-life athletes and compete with their friends on trying to collect the most points possible. Usually this happens season-long, and at the end of the season of a championship, the person that has done best actually is a winner. So, as I said, this is based on real-life statistics and the actual performance of athletes in the respective matches. So here you can see also in the presentation, we have a football pitch with football being the predominant way, the predominant sport in Europe. So our presentation will focus on football. You see that we have assembled a team of athletes from different clubs. The players, the athletes, collect their points based on the real-life statistics of athletes playing on the weekend. And points are generated through a scoring matrix, which closely reflects the real-life performance of these athletes on the pitch. So on the next slide, you actually have a typical scoring system, a scoring matrix that represents the real-life performance of these athletes. Here you can see typical aspects of the game where you have both positive and negative points depending on the actions. So for example, for football, A goal, of course, would be positive and a red card would be negative. And you have different weightings depending both on the action, the specific statistic, as well as different weightings depending on the position of the athlete on the field. So different athletes have different expected roles and requirements. So we took this concept of fantasy football and the performance of athletes in real life, and essentially we have commercialized it by providing performance props, which is a fancy way to say we provide odds on the performance of athletes on the real life games. Our clients are primarily betting operators, so you understand that the need to generate accurate odds is very important for us. It's critical for the business model that we use. This creates a very useful challenge, which is the statistical modeling of all these individual athlete statistics at an individual athlete level. So we need to be able to generate odds at an athlete level. And I'll pass the ball back to Vasilis so that he can get you into more details of how we do this.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I will continue this presentation. Our betting products that Bill, prior to me, presented you in detail have met this statistical significant challenge. But let's take a taste of this challenge by presenting some results of our application in which we use both previous and current year seasons data of the English Premier League, the data provided from the official feed provider of Opta. We use our stand for our models, and of course the interest of this application is to predict the fantasy performance points of each athlete. For this purpose, we have fitted several Bayesian hierarchical models, such as the Gaussian, Poisson, and order multinomial ones. As you can understand, we have fitted this model within Bayesian framework in order to capture better the multi-level structure of the model and to generate markets based on the predictive distribution of the athletes. Finally, the comparisons in terms of predictive performance between these three models will be implemented by using the train set of 1 year and test set of 2 months. I have to mention here before I start this application that also across several leagues and in other cross-validation tests, the inference was the same one. Okay, all the time today, as Bill said before, we hear about fantasy points and fantasy performance points. In this bar plot, we observe the fantasy performance points of only starting lineup athletes, because athletes who are playing the pitch as substitutes are considered as void markets and we do not score them. Firstly, we observe that the most frequent score is 2 fantasy points, and this is mainly due to the fact that if an athlete plays at least 60 minutes or more without executing any other skill actions, they receive 2 fantasy points. Furthermore, we observe too few athletes with negative scores, which primarily represent bad performance in these matches. The explanation of this fact is that in the worst scenario, imagine that an athlete can receive only 1 fantasy point if he plays less than 60 minutes. In order to reach negative scores, this athlete must implement any negative action, such as to receive a yellow card, a red card, to commit fouls. On the other hand, the highest scores primarily belong to forwards when they have outperformed scoring ability. For example, if they score 2 or 3 goals. In the next figure, we observe the fantasy points box plots across field positions of athletes. The first inference is that both goalkeepers and strikers have the best performance. And surprisingly, if you observe the dark line inside the box plot of the goalkeepers, is higher than the striker ones, despite the fact that the whole box plot of the strikers and the most extreme values belong to them. Another interesting finding is that both attacking and central midfielders, based on our scoring system, they receive the same fantasy points for each skill action. However, the performance of the attacking midfielders is greater than the central ones because they are participated more in the final third of the pitch and by extension in the attacking play of the game by executing crosses, assists, goals, etc. The same inference, but with different interpretation, I think, holds also for in defenders. Both fullbacks and defenders receive the same fantasy points for each skill action. However, fullbacks are participating more in the final third of the pitch by making overlaps, crosses, they win more corners, and for these reasons, they have greater rating than the central defenders, who mainly achieve to score fantasy points when they have clean sheet. Finally, concerning exploratory analysis, here in this graph, we observe the relationship between the previous performance of athletes in the last 5 matches and the future performance in the next matches. As we observe here, we see a positive relationship between the previous performance and the next performance of these athletes. This fact is more intense to strikers, but in terms of convenience, this slide is not presented here. Now, after the finalization of exploratory analysis, we are ready to proceed to the Bayesian modeling of fantasy soccer. I have to admit that in this field, limited work has been implemented, mainly by Leonardo, who is also attending this conference. And they have constructed a Bayesian model to predict the fantasy performance points of athletes based on the Fadalcio scoring system, which is extremely different than our ones. For this reason, we have followed a totally different research path, which consists of using some athletes' performance analytics, some teams' performance analytics, as well as additional pre-match and available betting coach information, which is available to us. As you can understand, for confidentiality reasons, we cannot disclose you any further detail about specific model implementation, such as the price distribution, the covariates, etc. However, this cannot stop us to provide you comparisons of our predicted performance of models. In this graph, you observe the comparison between Gaussian and Poisson models. The dark blue line refers to the observed fantasy points, while the sea blue refers to the 90% predicted fantasy points based on the predicted distribution of our Bayesian models. The first interesting finding is the Gaussian model systematically underperforms in the test set in a significant part of this distribution. Also, the Poisson model underperforms in this test set. However, based on the mean absolute error, which measures the distance between the projected fantasy points and the observed ones, has showed us that the Poisson model is better to Gaussian one. For this reason, we have tried to fit an alternative modeling option which is better in terms of predicted performance. This is the ordinal multinomial one. Before I continue to present you the details of this graph, we have to refer to some assumptions that I have made before this analysis. First of all, the fantasy points less than 2.5 and above 7.5 were considered as 2 separate response categories in terms of avoiding the overfitting and in terms of betting operators' convenience. The second assumption is for Poisson model. The projections of the Poisson model were transformed in the same scale of the order multinomial in order to have a fair comparison between them. Now, if you can check carefully this graph, the order multinomial model in almost all cases except for the value 3 captures better the relative frequencies of each event. On the other hand, Poisson systematically underperforms in almost all cases except for the value 7. Furthermore, based on some deviance metrics such as the mean absolute error and accuracy, as well as F1 score, which is not provided in this slide, the order multinomial is the final selected model for our case. Now, what we have presented you until now, the predicted comparison of our fitted models and some interesting exploratory analysis. In the next figure, as you can see, nowadays, a hot topic is how COVID-19 has affected several aspects of our life. Of course, one aspect of our life is the sports, and specifically our fantasy sports. And we observe that in both athletes and teams level, their fantasy points performance prior to COVID-19 breakdown with stadiums filled with crowd, the performance in home ground was higher than their performance in the away one. However, during COVID-19 breakdown with the stadiums empty, their performance in both home and away grounds are much similar. This means that prior to COVID-19, there was an evidence about a common home effect in their performance. And if you can see the tables here, the Premier League, even in the pre-COVID era and the during COVID era, the competitive level of this competition has remained to the same level concerning both athletes and teams' performance. This can confirm the fact that English Premier League is one of the best leagues across the world, and it is one of the most famous contests. Now, our final fixture is that in the right, you can observe the best lineup proposed by the authors of the Sporting Life blog. This is a very famous blog in the United Kingdom. On the left, you can observe the best lineup of the previous year in the Premier League based on our fantasy scores. As you can see, the first inference is that we have 4 incumbent players with the right lineup. The most prominent position holds for the Liverpool players, which is a very reasonable fact because Liverpool, as all of you know, was the championship owner of the previous year. But from this slide, I hope you keep in mind both De Bruyne and Grealish names. As you can see, in De Bruyne, we have assigned the captain mark and the Grealish the vice captain mark. De Bruyne has the best performance while Jack Grealish has the second one. As far as Jack Grealish is concerned, in the previous year, Jack Grealish had an excellent performance, and also this year, of course, despite his medium performance of his team, Aston Villa. For this reason, he has been called by the coach of the national team for friendly matches of the national team. However, the security guard of the training center of the national team denied his entry to Jack Grealish because he was not so familiar with him. However, if the rumors about his transfer to Manchester United being confirmed, maybe the security guards, all over the country, learn about this guy. On the other hand, Alexander-Arnold was selected in our lineup as the choice of right fullback because he has a very good performance in assists, goals, and he has won several corners. However, his record to the accurate crosses is very bad. More specifically, almost 75% of his crosses were inaccurate. Alexander-Arnold still guides the worst record concerning the accurate crosses in the English Premier League in all over the years. Now, concluding this very interesting presentation concerning the fantasy sports, we have to propose that in the foreseeable future, we have an excellent collaboration with a leadership student of Master Statistics at AUEB. Special thanks to Professor Jufran Karlis for this great opportunity. Together, we investigate the play prediction analysis of fantasy sports and specifically of the fantasy soccer. And based on the expansion of our company to several USA sports such as NBA, NFL, ice hockey, etc., we are very interested to find another sports which are very appealing to the USA users. Can anyone imagine of you which is one of them? Of course, the Fantasy Bachelor. As you can see, the Fantasy Bachelor, I don't know if all of you have an idea about Bachelor, is a game in which gentlemen or ladies try to find their best couple. And as we can see, in the USA, 5% of the USA users participate in this competition. Any details or any suggestions about fantasy performance analytics that will help us improve better the projections of these performances are more than welcome. Now some references. Thank you for your time and your consideration to this presentation.
We are happy to have any questions that you would like, or any more in-depth information that you would need on any of these points.
Thank you very much. Let's give me 1 minute to open the microphones. Just 1 minute.
Okay.
Info, meeting options. Okay.
And we definitely want to hear any suggestion about Fantasy Bachelor.
So if you
Yes.
have any question for Vasilis or Bill, you can now raise your hand or send a message to the chat. I cannot see any question. I was very intrigued by the Fantasy Bachelor.
It is
Professor
a
Zoufras?
statistics.
Well, what about Eurovision, which is very...
Yeah, this is an annual contest. Fantasy Bachelor maybe will be a weekly event. More appealing to Fantasy USA users.
So according to what I remember, you said that you are now focusing on NBA, on Fantasy NBA or not?
We have completed our analysis on NBA and NFL, so we are ready to offer these sports to our US focused clients, and we will be moving to other US focused sports in the near future, starting with baseball and ice hockey as well, and of course Bachelor.
Yeah, the most interesting one.
I think there was a raised hand.
I can see
Yes.
a question in the chat. Why football fantasy? In football fantasy, the players don't receive any points if their team win. Yeah, I remember that previously in the Greek fantasy football, they were taking some points if the team was winning. This question comes from Pavlos.
Bill?
Yes, I can take that. So
Okay.
we want to score the performance of the athlete independently of what his team does. So we are able to offer odds on an individual athlete level. So having his performance, his individual performance based on the overall performance of the team would not be a very fair statistic to add into our scoring table. This is something that if our clients want to add, it's something that can be adjusted, but we would suggest against it. So it's a more fair and accurate representation of his individual performance.
Taking the opportunity from Pablo's question, if you ask a product where players also take points from the team, do you think you will need to adjust your model to take also information for the team performance, or a similar model that like the one you proposed is going to do the job?
Yes, all our proposed modeling methodologies are using, as I have mentioned before, some teams' performance analytics, which capture the performance of the team, and of course, in each game, the difference between the own team of the player versus the opponent team.
Okay, there are two more questions, so the people are heating up. There is a question from Yannis Konstantopoulos. What about women's game? Do you have any plans for that?
Our analysis can be applied across different leagues, whether it's men's sports or women's sports. So this would be respective. We are focusing on the bigger leagues and sports because commercially it makes sense for us and for our clients. Otherwise, the analysis is essentially fully transferable.
So what about now that from this question, I can think of football, soccer in the States, which is supposed to be women sport. So do you have any discussions about that? Any negotiations about that?
The problem, Yannis, is that soccer in the States is extremely small at any level. So we would be happy to explore this and run analysis on that, but we haven't had the chance so far.
There is one last question by another user that I cannot understand the name because it's a username. maybe it would be better for the training set to consist from the beginning of the championship until 2 months before its end. So this is something
We
between...
have tried several cross-validation checks. We have considered 2 years train set, 1 year train set, the current year train set. The best performance in almost all validation checks and across several leagues has showed that the use of 1 year train set of our data was the best choice, and this provided the smallest mean prediction error. For this reason, we have chosen this threshold.
Okay. If there are no other questions, let's thank...
I see a raised hand by Vasilis Kapatsoulias.
I cannot see that. Why?
Yes, I can also see this hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Vasilis.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Vasilis or Bill too. Great presentation, thanks. And I've been a huge fan of fantasy sports for the past 10 years. And I did very well actually this year in Fantasy Premier League on the FPL actual application. I have a question about if you have modeled the price increase or decrease of each player going forward, because my strategy this year was to base my transfers based on the number of incoming transfers, because the more people transfer in players, their price increases, so your squad value increases. So that kind of changes the value of each player going forward. So have you had that into consideration? I'm not sure if your fantasy sports are day by day or your squad value increases every game week.
Vasilis, let me take this one.
Okay, Bill.
I think what you're referring to is more of a strategy, long-term strategy in terms of a long-term game, like, as you said, Fantasy Premier League. So we are trying to predict the performance of the athletes on the next game. The way I understand the question is that you are having a strategy long-term of how you are going to make any transfers so to achieve the best potential result in terms of fantasy points throughout the league season, which is slightly different from what we are trying to achieve here. So we are providing the odds and essentially our projections of fantasy points, and then it is up to the users to be able to assemble this in the best possible way and format to get the most points from their whole team. If that makes sense.
How far out do you make these projections? How many game weeks out, or is it just for that game week?
For a client, now we currently do it for 5 weeks ahead. And this will be launched as well for the next Fantasy Premier League to be more specific. And of course, we update our results every game week with the latest information we have. So we rerun our projections based on all available data.
This is awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's thank again the people from FSI. And let's move to the second talk of the session.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure participating.
Yes, it was a very great honor for us.
The next talk will be by George Marinakos, Head of Customer Analytics of OPAP. Everybody knows OPAP in Greece. It's a big betting company, the biggest one. So I will pass the floor to George. Kalispera, George.
Kalispera. Hi all. I'm George. How are you? Amazing stuff from Fantasy Sports, especially the slide proving that the absence of people from the pitches, let's say, downgrades the performance of the team. So bring back our Sundays, I would say. I'm George. I'm coming from OPAP. OPAP, as you already know, is one of the biggest monopolies in Balkans in retail gaming, let's say. And recently, it's a booming player in the online gaming also. So I have the honor to lead the customer analytics team there, specializing on the online gaming behavior of the customers and providing insights for CRM reasons, let's say. There is a whole bunch of people working for CRM and customer intelligence for online products in OPAP. And on behalf of them, I want to thank the SO team. It's an honor for us to participate to this workshop. Let me share my screen to start seeing our material. I must say that I hope you see our screen. So we are going to speak today about how CRM analytics in the Greek online sports betting market can deliver at the end of the day the ultimate customer experience. As I said before, OPAP is a booming player in the online market right now, which is by itself a booming market globally, especially under the pandemic conditions. So we are here today to share with you our practices, how data science is involved in the value creation game within the sports betting industry. So the basic sections that we will speak today is how is the Greek online market shaped today, how the Greek online customer behaves top line, what is the online bookmaker in Greece is trying to do so as to attract and engage as many customers as possible, what is the role of the data scientist within this environment and how he operates to drive decisions and actions, how data science connects with CRM and commercial actions towards the customer, what is the analytics ecosystem which drives the information towards the value creation, and at the end of the day, what kind of experience the customer has towards his whole journey from registration to maturity in our platforms, let's say. So more or less, we are talking about a presentation basically displaying the crucial role of the data scientist in the online gaming environment, especially in Greece. Why especially in Greece? As you can see, we are talking about a market 2020 of 1 million customers generating 0.5 of Greek GDP, 800 million GGR. Gross gaming revenue is the money lost from bets in an annual basis. This is a huge number for the Greek economy status right now. GDP is reduced by 9% versus 2019, but the online market has grown by 35%. So this is why we are talking about a booming market. As you can see, in a growing market, naturally the competitors increase. So you can see 10 different online gaming providers operating in Greece right now, being under a war of market shares. Now, 1 million customers, almost 10% of the population, is betting online. 80% of them are males, 20% are females. And given that casinos and retail stores were locked down most during 2020, the general consuming behavior shifted from retail to online. And this helped the online betting market to grow even further. So that's the online market. But what the online customer thinks before he selects his online provider, in what website should he register and what to play. So customers, it is at the center of our attention right now. Why? Because we need to decompose his thoughts. We need to train our algorithms to think like humans so as to provide good customer experiences. So the customer thinks, how can I play? You can play from your mobile, from the apps, from the desktop, or your tablet. Why should I play? I should play for fun. I like sports. I like the heat of gambling, or I want to learn a new virtual world, let's say. What can I play? I can bet on sports, football, basketball, whatever, I can bet on virtuals, casino, and numerics. For what should I play? Well, I have the odds to earn an income. I want to kill my time and break my routine. I want to entertain myself, exploring new things. Or I believe I have great skills and I will beat the system. It's a thought that we all do, let's admit it. All these thoughts are carried within the data that the customer creates through his activity. And the data scientist art is transforming complexity into sensible customer stories. This is the art of the data scientist of the present and of the future, regardless hard skills and regardless scientific thinking. Now, let's focus on the Greek sports bettor online. The behavioral norm of the average bettor is this. 80% of betting activity is skewed towards football, 15% towards basketball, and 5% towards tennis or other sports. Premier League, as the colleagues from the fantasy sport team said, is the favorite league of Greeks. And then the Greek Super League follows. Their favorite market is the final result or over-under goals and stuff like that. Usually, the average customer bets 10 euros to win 1,000 euros. As you can understand, this works in favor of the bookies. So everybody tries to chase the big dream through low-value bets. But this is a natural behavior. Customers use free bets of the CRM activities to bet on underdogs, so they seek even higher returns. Live betting and live streamings are crucial for them because they want to watch the matches and feel the heat of live betting right now. They bet twice a week, but they visit every day to check odds, to see the competition, to check what are their options and stuff like that. And they are registered definitely in more than one bookmakers. So their behavioral aspects drill down into three basic categories: behavioral trends, their money management style, either they stick to a budget or they display impulsive fluctuation, their betting style, they're putting low value bets for high return. On the other side, there are people with high value bets chasing low returns and stuff like that. Their preferences, they have preferred leagues, teams, and markets, and they have preferences towards football, basketball, or tennis. The second aspect is their playability aspects, their frequency of play, either they're loyal, regular, or peripheral, their spending habits, either they're high in value ranking or low or small fish, as we call them, their micro betting style, either they bet a lot of bets per day or small bets per day of higher value or a lot of events in one bet and stuff like that. And of course, they have their favorite days and their favorite hours of betting. Another aspect is the reaction level. Their reaction level composes from some categories like reaction to promos. There are people seeking and exploit every offer that we do. There are others that they repel promotional communications. There are people badly reacting to changes, or there are people that they like changes. An important aspect is their consensus. They give us their consent to monitor their cookie IDs, and only then we can analyze their data because the compliance rules are very strict in the online gaming market. There are others that allow us to send messages and others that they repel spamming. And of course, there is a level of awareness about big derbies, upcoming tournaments, and cup finals. These are the aspects of the sports betting behavior today, and the data scientist tries to capture these behaviors and segment them to differentiable but similar behaving groups. So, after the aspect of the customer, let's go to the bookmaker. Why me? Why the customer to choose me? because I have fancy content and easy to navigate. I have variety of offerings, sports, events, or markets. I offer operational stability and speed, either on mobile or on desktop or on tablets. Within my platform, it's easy for you to register and convenient to bet. I have competitive odds versus the competition, etc., etc. Now, the basic aspects of a bookmaker is the product, the CRM, and the operations. The product aims to good front ends, speed and usability, pricing, meaning competitive odds versus competition, variety of offerings in sports and tournaments, and content with clarity, relevancy, and attractiveness. Now let's go to our job, the CRM. We have some tools to engage the customer, to protect him, to make him be aware and to give him incentives to play to our platform. These elements are promotional elements like free bets or incentive to deposit or welcome offers, etc., etc. We have a lot of communication channels trying to be an omni-channel provider, communicating via SMS, notifications to mobile, emails, direct call campaigns, through web, through social media, any kind of communication channel we can leverage. We also invest in mass media because we want to attract the big masses, TV, radio, press, and stuff like that. And of course, we build loyalty schemes to reward, let's say, our loyal customers through prizes or VIP schemes, as we call them. Operations is a critical part because there we are obliged to provide a responsible gaming environment to our customers because we have to have established processing for predicting the problematic gambling behavior of a potential customer, help him to solve this problem and convince him to set limits to his daily playability so he hasn't any other problems in his life. Another aspect is trading, where the operational part defines the odds, identifies abusers, and any other risk management process. The KYC process, where basically we drag responsibly again the data from our customers after their consent through their registration process, account validation, of course always under GDPR compliance as we are obliged to. And of course the call center where the customer wants a responsive customer service 24/7. So this is the aspect of the bookmaker. The bookmaker doesn't know what the data scientist does underneath, doesn't know the magic, but he definitely needs us. He needs us, but he needs to understand us also. Now let's go to us, and by us, I mean all of us, because I believe more or less in one aspect or the other, we are all data scientists, we are analysts here. So we believe in the online team that the data scientist plays a crucial part to all this environment. The data scientist must to combine scientific thinking and knowledge, of course. He should handle massive data through programming, and he should talk business because the businessman doesn't understand SQL queries or select star or stuff like that. They understand by talking business. So we need to get in their shoes to explain what's happening. The X factor of the data scientist today in this environment is this: dig smart into massive data, serve automated simple solutions, drag fast the must-haves, and structure the solution design. This is the circle of trust, as I call it. The data scientist must combine hard skills. He should manipulate data through SQL. He should visualize data through Tableau or Power BI or any other tool of visualization. He should develop predictive models, supervised or unsupervised, via R programming or SAS programming or Python or whatever. But at the same time, he needs to have good presentational skills and communication fundamental basis, because he needs to make comprehensive recommendations. All this results to the analytics services that a data scientist provide to a bookmaker. So what we do is we do data infrastructure and complexity management. We design the data marts and we test the IT guys for the data transparency. So we need to speak the IT language also. We design campaign triggers and we simulate results. For example, during Euro, we need a campaign compensating customers that are losing high amounts of money. So what do we mean high? We need to find the norm and model it, and then simulate it before putting it into production. So we know a priori the costs and the audiences that this campaign addresses. We have to create data cubes, so scattered information from here and there is centralized to sensible super cubes, super data marts, let's say. Then customer deep dive analysis and insights. We identify problems, we explain the reasons, and we recommend the solutions. We try to crack the behavioral patterns of the customer through segmentation models, and we try to calculate risks and reveal opportunities by predictive modeling. Predictive analytics and machine learning. This is the most fancy stuff for all data scientists, I believe. We develop segmentation models. We train classification models to predict churn, upsell, cross-sell, or other customer choices. And we automate decision support systems, making recommendation engines like what to give and to whom, at what time, and in what type. And all of this information should speak directly to our production systems. Last but not least, promotional targeting and impact measurement. More or less, we are designing the campaigns, the intelligence of the campaigns, not the designers of the campaigns are the campaigners, but we do the analytics stuff behind that. So we measure the impact of these campaigns and we report to the organization what is the profit and loss of each and every campaign. So as you can understand, the role of a data scientist is the heart of online gaming operation. Although, as we all know, the online data scientist nowadays is a bit underestimated because nobody can understand what he does underneath, as I said. Now, how data science connects with the CRM function within a bookmaker. The CRM function consists of data scientists who are developing the segmentation models and the propensity models to predict the next choice of the customer. Then we need business intelligence developers, I mean IT programmers, so as to put our models in productions. Then the marketing campaigners take over, where they select the audiences and choose the marketing activities towards the customers. And of course, the decision makers who are monitoring the impact of all this activity and decide the direction of our, let's say CRM strategy. As you can see in the downside part of the slide, you see some segments, some behavioral segments, like live heavy spenders, let's say. Live heavy spenders have the highest betting value, the highest betting frequency. Their wallet is vastly skewed towards live betting. They're interested most in minor leagues or special markets. This is one behavioral segment. So the campaigner takes this information in the format of one score on one column to his campaign tool, and he designs a specific personalized campaign for this segment. So the segmentation logic and the machine learning behind that connects directly with the customer experience. But what is the analytical ecosystem? What is the data flow towards impacting the customer experience at the end of the day? We collect the data through the activity within our websites: browsing data, account data, playability data, a chaos. Then all this data are collected in our SQL server, in our data warehouse. Then we take over. The data scientists roll up this information in customer and day level in selected KPIs so as to map the behavior of the customer within a hyperplane. So we crunch our data through SQL and we visualize a massive amount of reports giving insights about behavioral patterns. Then we go segmenting this base. Our segmentation algorithms are built up via a variety of software, basically in SPSS Modeler, lately in Python or whatever. And of course, at each segment afterwards, we develop churn, upsell, or cross-sell predictive models so as to meet the next customer choice. All this information speaks directly to our campaign tool, which happens to be today Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is the most famous campaigning tool globally. And this way, the customer receives personalized campaigns based on his preferences and based on his favorite way of betting. Now, then we measure the impact. How many of them we targeted? How many of them opened the campaign? How many accepted it? How many played? How many covered their cost? And finally, all is about value creation because we are evaluated based on the return on investment that we achieve through the whole analytics ecosystem. So if we go deeper on the analytics era, excuse me, because it's a bit stuck. So, excuse me for that. Can you hear me? I hope so.
No, Yorgo. Yes, everything is fine.
Okay. So, we map the customer behavior by creating the data cubes. Then we segment our customers, capturing their behavioral patterns. We check our segmentation models constantly regarding their differentiation power, their stability, their business sensibility, and their usability. We need good silhouette measures. We need very low jumps of customers from segment to segment. We need good descriptives sensible for the business owners. And of course, we need, in a micro segment level, let's say, big audiences so every micro campaign can cause tangible impact in the business. As long as we have our segments in place and daily scored, then we develop a segment by segment churn models, upsell or cross-sell models based on the classification algorithm theory. Our favorite algorithms for classifying and predicting churn are basically decision trees or ensemble algorithms. Why that? Why don't we prefer MLPs or neural networks, let's say? Because the decision tree help us to explain to business owners the patterns in simple words. So we sacrifice a bit of accuracy in favor of sensibility and comprehensiveness. Then the mission is to deploy the models in production, meaning that we need to put our segmentation scores and our probabilistic scores about the next choice of the customer to be linked with our campaigning tools. We cooperate with the BI developers and we translate our models into Python. So Python language then is compatible to our, let's say, data flows. Then we have to measure the impact. The campaigners do the campaigns, they execute the tactical plan towards the segments, and then we measure incrementality. How we do that? To each and every campaign, we keep aside a control group of similar characteristics in comparison with a targeted audience, and we monitor specific KPIs like frequency, spend, activity, churn, and stuff like that in target group versus control group. And this is how we can, let's say, isolate the impact of these campaigns versus do nothing scenario. At the end of the day, we are reporting the net financial result of all these activities. And that's exactly how we can prove that CRM analytics are bringing value in the organization. That's why we have a great tool to prove our value, to prove the data science value to the businessman. And the businessman can invest confidently on us and on the data science era, let's say. Now, what happens with the customer after all these data flows, activities, and let's say plans? A critical part in the customer life is the first 30 days. Let's say it's a welcome part. There, the customer has to register, provide his data after his consent, and he has 30 days to validate. This is a critical path because if he doesn't validate, the account closes. So if the account closes, the registration for us is dead. So we don't want this. So it's critical for us to keep the customer engaged and go through the validation process, the KYC process. It is proven from analysis that customers entering in the first 30 days into the CRM welcome journeys display 20% higher validation rates versus control groups. Then another critical part is after the 31st day of the customer until the 3rd month of his life. This is the critical path for churn or not. It is proven that until the 3rd or 4th month, the customer either churns or stays with us. So we have for him premature established behaviors. He's trying to establish his patterns over the first 3 months. And we are trying to develop pre-recognition models, let's say, and to accordingly design campaigning journeys that will boost his engagement. And it is proven that customers entering CRM retention journeys display 30% lower churn rates versus control group, which is a huge impact number. Because as you can imagine, when we are talking about 100,000 customers, 30% incremental activity is a lot of customers. Then the third critical path of the lifetime stage is engagement. Then the customer establishes behaviors. He has developed clear preferences and reactions, and there is the critical path for becoming loyal. It is proven from analysis again that customers entering CRM upsell journeys display 10% higher play frequency versus control groups. Play frequency in the engagement stage is the most critical KPI on a customer level, because it shows in the most clear way the engagement of the customer towards our platform.
Yorgo, sorry to interrupt you. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Now, the final stage of the customer is maturity. After the first year of his existence, customers who are entering the CRM responsible gaming journeys, because we have to protect the customer also. We have to avoid problematic gambling behaviors because we don't want unhealthy customers in our platforms. We launched several campaigns to limit the playability activity of specific customers who are behaving, let's say, exceeding the norm. So they display much lower self-exclusion rates versus control groups. At the end of the day, we need to achieve a satisfied customer who is an ambassador for our services. Now, finishing up, we believe and we vision in the future that data science will be in the summit of business function quite quickly. I believe that we have given to you through that presentation a quite good, let's say, environment display and the role of the data scientist in this environment. We believe at what we do, and we are trying all the time to prove that data science can lead business overall. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your nice presentation. Do we have any questions? You can open your microphone, raise your hand if you want to make some questions for George. Okay, George, can I make a question and maybe other people will join us? How what you do is related with customer analytics. And my question is how the behavior of teams and sports influence the behavior of customers. For example, how, from your experience, when do you see an increase in the betting behavior of your customers?
Well, the fact is that in times like this June, where the Euro starts, the sports betting calendar increases and the interest boosts up. So we expect a significant increase of betting activity in the sports betting area of the customers. But what we observe is this. The increase of activity is highly correlated with winnability and budget. It's not so much correlated with tournaments or team behaviors or match results. The sports bettor needs to find something to analyze. He likes reading, he likes analyzing before he bets. So the most important factor that affects the increase of his betting activity is how many he loses in relation with his budget and in relation with the variety of the options that he has in front of him. This is the pattern, top line.
So you're putting first the economic situation of the country and its customers separately, and not the sports related facts or events.
I'm talking about the ability of the customer to gain returns from his betting activity when he has big peaks of lost money based on his budget. Then he churns. Then to be more correct, the probability of churn increases. So we have to do something, capture this like that very fast, and compensate his losses and give him the opportunity to go back to his budget, let's say. This is the secret.
Okay, and how you do that? How you compensate the losses?
Well, as I said, we have segmented his behavior. We know his pattern. We know what is his average money loss on a daily basis. And when we see, let's say, 3, 4, or 5 times higher daily loss for one single customer, then we trigger a compensating campaign on a real-time basis or on a semi-real-time basis with 1 day delay, let's say.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the people from the floor? I cannot see any questions, so let's thank again George for his nice and different presentation. So now we are going to have about 12 minutes break until the next session. So we are going to begin again at 6:15 local time. Thank you, George, again.
Thank you very much. It was an honor. Thank you very much.